and welcome to Aliens Revealed Live. I'm your host, Dean Caporella, here on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. Alien abductions, monster-infested ranches, men in black, near-death experiences, close encounter experiences, and more. We speak to some of the most amazing people on the planet, ready and willing to share their chilling stories with you. And they all come from the Aliens Revealed Live files here on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. Well, what is contact with non-human intelligence teaching us as a species? Mainstream ufology should be concentrating more on humankind's consciousness level ability, according to one man. Rey Hernandez is a co-founder of the Edgar Mitchell Foundation for research on extraterrestrial and extraordinary experience, more commonly known as FREE. He spoke frankly about where we should be concentrating our efforts during the Aliens Revealed Live online summit last year, even ruffling a few feathers. He says instead of continually hashing over familiar UFO topics, we should be concentrating on consciousness-level contact. While he may push a few buttons once in a while, Hernandez is passionate about consciousness contact with non-human intelligence. A rapidly growing army of consciousness devotees has emerged within the ufology and paranormal communities in recent years, adding weight to a growing phenomena. In 2012, Hernandez was simply living a normal life. He clocked in at work every day and then headed home doing what we all do on a daily basis. His life changed in an instant when he and his wife had their first experience with non-human intelligence. It was a healing experience that left Hernandez a little confused but curious about what had just happened. In the months ahead, the contact continued. The downloads he received had significant impact on himself and his family, and he was determined to figure out what was going on. And what Hernandez discovered is truly remarkable, but will take getting used to. It will change everything when we as human beings can grasp the significance of it. According to Hernandez's extensive research, contact with non-human intelligence in any of the following ways are interrelated. And that includes near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences, UFO contact, remote viewing, ghosts, spirits, poltergeists, orbs, channeling, hallucinogenic journeys, and more. And he says it has to do with what our true reality is. Rey Hernandez is joining us. Hi, Rey.
Thank you for the invitation.
Well, Rey, you're relatively new to this field of non-human intelligence, so how did you get started? What prompted your interest?
It started in March of 2012 when my wife and I had an experience in our living room with an energy being that healed our 15-year-old Jack Russell Terrier, who we were going to be euthanizing later that afternoon. Very, very briefly, what took place was that my wife had been praying all night for a miracle. She, at that point, was deeply religious. She was born and raised in Mexico, hardcore Mexican Catholic. And so once she found out the night before at about 8 o'clock that our dog had become totally paralyzed, and we had called our vet, and we had scheduled the very next day for to euthanize her. It was then that she began praying all night, and I went to sleep. So in the morning, we both woke up. The dog was still totally paralyzed, and that was going to be her last day here on Earth. And so she carried the dog down the stairs, and once she got down to the stairs, she saw this physical object that looked like an upside down letter U. So it was like this, an upside down letter U, but it was roughly 1 foot wide by about 1.5 feet in height. It was silverish metallic, but it was phasing in and out of reality. It wasn't fully material most of the time. And it was semi-translucent. And my wife at that point thought it was La Virgen de Guadalupe, which is the Virgin Saint of Mexico. And she began praying right then and there. And then it did certain light configurations on her and shot off certain lights to the side. And at that point, she called me down, not because she was scared, but she wanted me to see her angels. So I totally ignored her. She went upstairs, pulled me out from my bed, and then I followed her down the stairs. She wouldn't tell me what it was. And then right in front of the living room, she disappeared right in front of me. The dog had disappeared. And all of a sudden, I had no peripheral vision whatsoever. It was only in a certain area I could see. Everything else was all dark. And there is what I now describe as an energy being. And let me describe it to you. It was roughly 2.5 feet wide by about a foot in height, made up of numerous colors, vibrating like in a mirage in a desert. It was moving like that, semi-transparent. And then this being, immediately when I saw it, just totally controlled my consciousness to the point where I didn't care that my wife had disappeared, the dog had disappeared. I looked at it, I stared at it, and I said, bullshit. This is what you got me up for this crap, And then I turned around. I said, I'm going to go to sleep. I turned around. I walked up the stairs. I went to my bed and immediately knocked me out. 45 minutes later, when I woke up, I was now fully conscious. And I ran down the stairs and my wife, poof, popped back into reality, looked down, saw that the dog was running around, and she started celebrating in the middle of the living room. And the dog was completely healed even before when she had become very, very ill, because for 2 years she had severe arthritis. She couldn't run, she couldn't jump, she was walking around gingerly, but now she was back like a teenager, running around the entire living room and house. And so, and then 2 months later, my wife had missing time. We didn't know what that was until 6 months later, when after our third major event, we had found out the name of this organization called MUFON. We had called MUFON to investigate our case because we were seeing UFOs left and right, having all of these paranormal experiences. And so this elderly lady who was a retired school teacher came by with her husband. Her husband is a retired hurricane center scientist here in Miami. And she was the one that said, what happened to your wife is she had missing time, because I didn't know what that was until that point. And then because my wife for 45 minutes had no idea where she had gone. And so what happened after that experience then, my wife would call down her angels in the evening, especially 1 month that she stayed an entire month in Mexico. And lo and behold, each time this big gigantic UFO would appear.
Wow. So your wife had the ability to consciously connect with these beings.
Yes, correct. And that happened numerous times. And it was quite instantaneous. I mean, within a few minutes, these large UFOs would appear. And then one time she saw these three humanoid-looking beings that were 7 to 8 feet tall. They dressed in white monk's robes, and they floated right in front of her up to a certain point, and then they disappeared. And so she was having all of these experiences, precognition, tons of precognition. She detected a tumor in my back. She knew that our car engine was going to explode if we were going to be making this long trip. Finally, after her harassing me for an entire week and her canceling the trip, I brought it to the mechanic. The mechanic said, thank God you didn't go on that trip because your engine would have exploded. And these are the reasons why. And so, and by coincidence, we were going to go to our very first UFO conference, and Kathy Martin was going to be there, and Grant Cameron was going to be there, and Denise Stoner was going to be there. I think 3 of the people that you interviewed, and also this other lady, a researcher, her name is Yvonne Smith. So it was about a 3.5-hour trip from where we lived in Miami. So, it was canceled because of she just refused to go. Then I had to reinstate it again. So that was right before our very first UFO conference. So she had tons of these precognition abilities. And then what happened was 6 months after my initial experience in the living room, I called on my first UFO. And within 15 minutes, this huge, gigantic UAP showed up, and it was the size of a small football stadium. And there was telepathic communication back and forth. My daughter got to see it because whatever this intelligence was, put the voice of my daughter in my head that she wanted to see it. So I ran to the window. I started calling down my daughter, and she got to see it. As I said before, there was 3 friends of mine got to see it as well. And then there was telepathic communication between myself and whatever was the intelligence in this UAP. And then the way they got me to leave was that they put into my mind that I was being attacked by hundreds of mosquitoes. And then that never did occur, because my daughter told me later that that didn't occur. And when she said that, it was like the hypnotist snapped his finger and I woke up. Mm-hmm. I was in some type of controlled, unconscious type of scenario where I was fully aware of my awareness for a certain time period, and up to a certain point that I couldn't cross that bridge. For example, we couldn't take pictures of it, we couldn't take videos of it, but yet this is a huge object the size of a small football stadium that was literally right on top of my next door neighbor's house. And it was like that for 45 minutes. Everyone had cell phones. The teenager had her Apple iPhone, in her hand. Mm-hmm. Okay. And so there was that type of controlling of your consciousness.
Wow.
During all of these experiences. And then after that experience began 2.5 years of nonstop paranormal experiences for me. And then occasionally, I get to call down a UFO whenever I want to, but I don't see a need to anymore. The last time was at the home of Mike Marburg, north of Tampa in Orlando, or who I believe you interviewed. If you look at his if you will read his log for February of 2018, for that month, you will see an entry by Rey Hernandez of the UFO that Mark and I and 2 other people saw that night. It was very, very large. That went right above us. So I have that ability still to this day, but I just don't see a need to call down a UFO.
So it begs the question then, Ray, contact modalities like UAPs, UFOs, near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences, ghosts, spirits, channeling, remote viewing, ESP, hallucinogenic journeys, orbs. I mean, are they all interrelated? Are they all the same thing?
Yes. Yes. So let me tell you how that developed, and also to talk about this new organization where we have over 20 PhD academics, and all of them have the same hypothesis. Let me start with the PhD academics, like that will draw the reader's attention. Okay. I started an organization titled Consciousness and Contact Research Institute, or CCRI. It's comprised of approximately 20 PhDs and several medical doctors, and about 10 individuals who do not have PhDs, but they're researchers in these various fields that you just mentioned. Some of the members in our organization, we have one of the co-chairs of our research committee is Dr. Jeffrey Long. He's a medical oncologist, a cancer specialist, who has written several books on near-death experiences, and he's been collecting survey data for over 20 years. He has over 14,000 individuals that have completed his surveys on near-death experiences. He has more than 4,000 individuals that completed his surveys on out-of-body experiences. And he is considered now one of the world's premier researchers on near-death experiences, especially since the retirement of the old vanguard, Raymond Moody, Dr. Kenneth Ring, Dr. Bruce Grayson, et cetera, et cetera. They're pretty much not doing research anymore, but Jeffrey is now working part-time. He's semi-retired, and he agreed to be the co-chair of our research committee. Okay. Also, the other co-chair of our research committee is Dr. Bob Davis. He's a retired professor of neuroscience. He taught neuroscience for more than 35 years at State University of New York. We also have Dr. Rudy Shields, who is an emeritus professor of astrophysics at Harvard University. And he was the director of the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Free Foundation, and he's going to be continuing his work with the CCRI Foundation. We also have Dr. Claude Swanson, who received a PhD in physics from Princeton University, where Einstein taught. Okay. We also have Dr. Dean Radin, who is the lead scientist at the Institute for Noetic Sciences, who is probably one of the world's leading research scholars on the psi phenomenon. And he's published 3 books on consciousness and the psi phenomenon. We have Stephen Schwartz, who's one of the inventors of remote viewing. For more than 50 years, he's been studying remote viewing. He's one of the founders of that, even before it was called remote viewing. We have Dr. Gary Schwartz, who received a PhD in psychology from Harvard University. He later became a tenured professor at Yale University. And for the last 20 years, he's been at the University of Arizona because they lured him away from Yale with a huge laboratory filled with, hundreds of thousands of electronic equipment, so he can study mediumship, and communication with deceased entities. And I could go on and on and on with names similar to this, but at least you and your audience members have an idea of the people in our group.
I was just going to say, in other words, combined IQ totaling into the thousands. Well,
these are individuals that have a deep, sincere interest in this phenomenon, most of them for at least 30 years, some of them for 50 years, okay? All of these people, and about another 15 that I didn't even mention, all of them hypothesize that consciousness is primary. That means that our physical reality is not what it seems to be, okay?
Right.
That really our consciousness reality is the true existence of our reality, which is a heavy topic to discuss, very complicated. We could do that at a later date. Secondly, all of these individuals hypothesize, just like I do, that all of what we're calling the contact modalities, which are the different ways that humans are piercing the veil and having contact with non-human intelligence, near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences, UFO contact, remote viewing, ghosts, spirits, poltergeists, orbs, channeling, hallucinogenic journeys, etc., etc., etc. All of them involve a manipulation of space-time. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And because all of them involve a manipulation of space-time, they share certain commonalities. And we have experiencers all over the world, as revered by our free experiencer research study, that are not just having UFO contact experiences. They're not just having NDEs. They're not just having just OBEs. They're having all of the above and much, much more. They're having all of the contact modalities, okay, throughout their lives, okay? So the researchers in our free research study, and I can talk about that a little bit later on, knew this, but we never had the data. Okay. Now, the fields of mainstream materialist ufology are totally clueless about this. They totally ignore these topics. When you talk about paranormal, oh, that's woo-woo science. That's woo-woo crazy shit, Mm-hmm. So they totally dismiss it. All they care about is talking about Rendlesham Forest or the Roswell crash for the 5,000th time. Or the new Tic Tac video that just came out, showing an Air Force pilot following a UFO in the field, okay? My perspective and the perspective of all the members in our organization is that what has that materialist approach contributed to a better understanding of the field of ufology? Okay, all of us argue very little. Okay, almost nothing. Okay, from 70 years ago, where has that knowledge taking place 70 years later? But let me backtrack a little bit, somewhat, and talk about the free experiencer research study. Then we could talk about the contact modalities. Okay.
This is with Dr. Edgar Mitchell?
Correct. This involves Dr. Edgar Mitchell. Okay. I told you and the audience members that there was about a 2.5-year period of nonstop paranormal experiences. Most of the major experiencers around the world would certainly understand that, because a lot of these experiences, they come in segments of time. Okay. Mm-hmm. And then they stop for a very long time period or a certain time period, and then they restart up again. Okay. Well, for me, I had that 2 years of intense experiences. One of those experiences, let me just go through one of them. Okay. One of them, I was driving on Route 836 in Miami, which is like an 8-lane highway that goes east and west. It takes major traffic from the western part of Miami, and in the morning leads you to downtown Miami. Folks in New York City, just think of the Long Island Expressway, mm-hmm. or people who live in New Jersey, the New Jersey Turnpike. It's always clogged. for 4 hours or so during rush hour. And so anyway, I was there at 8:30 in the morning, heading into downtown Miami. I am an IRS estate tax attorney. I've been doing that for more than 20 years. And that morning, I was listening to a radio interview of this man who was going to school to become a filmmaker. And he was doing a documentary on his liposuction, how he was getting the fat from his liposuction, and he was doing art fat from that. Okay.
Right.
And so very entertaining, very stimulating. And all of a sudden, I was not in my car anymore. I was pure mind. I was pure consciousness. There was no physicality surrounding where I was. Okay. And so, and this was very, very quickly, the scenarios changed. And so immediately you're like in bewilderment, what the hell is going on? And then all of a sudden I see materializing all around me like videos. I was inside of a huge cartwheel, and the cartwheel had like different spokes. Mm-hmm. Okay. And inside each spoke had a different video, and it was slowly moving around. And then what I saw is in each of these cartwheels was what I now call a contact modality. And as I said before, these are all the different ways that humans are piercing the veil and having contact with non-human intelligence. All of them involve a manipulation of space-time. So in one was UAP, UFO type of contact experiences. Another one was near-death experiences. Another one was out-of-body experiences. Another one was ghosts and spirits. Another one were, ghosts and spirits and poltergeist type of experiences. Another one was channeling. Another one was remote viewing. Another one were hallucinogenic type of experiences where people are communicating with non-human intelligence, et cetera, et cetera. And then I looked at each one, and I got like an instantaneous download of everything involved with that phenomenon. Okay. And I knew what it was. And so then after I got like a quick download for each of these different things, right? Then it was never a voice, but it was just information that was given to me that said humans are studying all of these different phenomena as separate and distinct, but in actuality, it's one phenomenon.
Right.
Okay, they're not separate. Okay, humans believe. Humans are calling it consciousness, the glue that's holding it all together. Okay, but in fact, it's the very fabric of our reality. Okay. And so as all of this was going on, I had no conceptualization, no idea what the hell was going on. I didn't even understand these concepts. These are just concepts that would, put to me.
I mean, as you said, it's very complicated to get your head around for the average person.
Yeah. And so, and then what the information that was given to me was you need to inform humanity of the relationship between us, whatever this intelligence is, okay, the spirit world, and consciousness. Okay, mm-hmm. The relationship between us, the spirit world, and consciousness. Okay, you will need assistance, and there's two criteria for that assistance. This is not about you getting rich and making money. For those two criteria, okay. So immediately after it said you need to have individuals to help you out that would have minimal ego, poof, I'm back in the car. I'm still listening to this interview, and the interview did not skip a beat. There was no time that had spent. Okay, so I was, but yet I believe that I was out there for 20 to 30 minutes in that experience. So I was taken outside of space and outside of time. Okay, and that was one of the questions that we asked in our free experiencer research study. Have you ever been taken to what might be considered a multi-dimensional matrix reality? And we defined it.
Okay. Yep.
We defined it a little bit. Like the best picture would be like, have you seen Jodie Foster's movie Contact?
Yeah, a million times.
Okay. You know where she was brought, right?
Yep.
Okay. We asked that question. And what did we get? Half the people that took our survey, half have had that experience.
Wow.
Okay. Now, do you think mainstream ufology discusses this? Okay. But why? Because these are considered paranormal experiences that science cannot explain. But yet here you have half of the 4,200 people that took our survey stated that, including myself. Okay. All right. We had 80% of the people that took our survey. I'm jumping a little bit ahead of the game, have had these out-of-body experiences, 80%. Okay. Huge numbers. Okay. But anyway, I'm jumping ahead of the game here. Okay. So here I was taken outside of space-time. Now, that wasn't the most interesting part of what happened. The most interesting part of what happened is what happened immediately afterwards. Okay. Immediately afterwards, when I got back home late that afternoon, I got an email from Mary Rodwell. And it's too bad that you already interviewed, because you could have asked her this question. Okay. I received an email from Mary. She said, "Dear Ray, I'm sorry I'm responding to an email that you had sent me 6 months ago, but it just popped up on my computer today." Okay. So Here was a message held up in cyberspace for the very first day that I had that experience. Okay. Then I responded back to her. I said, well, in the last 6 months, this is all the crazy stuff that has happened. And this happened today. And she was like blown away. She says, "Oh my God, Ray, we need to talk." So she showed me how to use Skype, and we spoke on Skype till like 1:30 in the morning. Okay. And we continued to our discussions, because I told her how to go to work the next day. So the very next morning, I received a phone call at 9:30 in the morning. "Hello, is this Rey Hernandez?" "Yes, who's this?" "Oh, this is Dr. Rudy Shields." "Who?" I had no idea who this man was. This is a retired professor of astrophysics for over 45 years at Harvard University, okay, calling me at 9:30 in the morning. What had happened was that Mary had sent him an email with my contact information, but he should have waited till Mary had sent my response that, yes, it's okay for Rudy to call me, which Mary was in my inbox, but I never checked that morning.
Yep.
Okay. And so I agreed to talk to him, and we spoke for 90 minutes. At that point, he heard my story, and he says, "What you got, Ray, was Dr. Edgar Mitchell's quantum hologram theory of consciousness, which is an advanced physics theory of how consciousness works." Okay. And also leads to the contact modalities as well. Okay. And so at the end of it, he says that he was going to be my scientific advisor for what I needed to do. And so I hadn't even given it any thought. This is the very next day. This is 24 hours later. Okay. He doesn't, "Ray, write down this telephone number." So I wrote it down. He says, "This is the telephone number of my mentor, and you need to talk to him." So I said, "Well, who's your mentor?" And he goes, "Dr. Edgar Mitchell." Okay. So we hung up the phone after 90 minutes, and he had given me the instruction to call Edgar Mitchell. And I knew who Edgar was, because after all of my UFO experiences, I was on the YouTube, Googling ufology, and Edgar Mitchell was pretty much the founder of the UFO disclosure movement. He also was pretty much one of the founders of modern parapsychology. He had started the Institute for Noetic Sciences, and he knew most of the parapsychologists in the world, and then all of the consciousness work that had been developed out of IONS, the Institute for Noetic Sciences. So I worked up the courage to give Edgar a call about 4 hours later, and lo and behold, he invited me to his home the very next day. So here I was, 24 hours after my experience. I was at the home of Edgar Mitchell. He only lived 90 minutes away in Lake Worth, Florida. Yep. And there I spent the entire day with Edgar, and he told me all about his life, all the details. And I subsequently became very good friends with Edgar, and I was at his home more than 20 different times. And I've got, photos to prove that as well, in case anyone is saying that. Well, Anyway, after that, Edgar told me that the experience that I had, which also involves some physics, equations popping in and out and that sort of thing. He says, "Ray, what you had gotten was my quantum hologram theory of consciousness." Okay. And then he went on to explain it. And then he says, "Rudy and I already discussed it. We have decided that we will be your scientific advisors whenever you decide to move forward with your mandate." And at that point, this was 48 hours later. I had no idea what the hell this man was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I thought he was a little off the rocker, And so I then left his home. I emailed Mary. We had a Skype conversation, and I told her everything that happened. And he says, look, if I ever do decide what I want to do, would you like to join us? And she said, yes. So it was like about a week later, she says, Ray, I've got the name for it. So she gave me that name, Free.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. A few days later, which was on a Sunday morning, I woke up, Saturday morning, I woke up and I had the whole research methodology for the world's first comprehensive academic research study of UFO contact experiencers. I wrote out all the details. It was like 3 or 4 pages in length,
right,
with all the topic categories of what would be asking in this methodology. And lo and behold, we had all these PhD academics that were interested in joining us. Dr. John Climo became the co-chair. Dr. John Climo taught research methodology and was a professor of psychology for 45 years. And he was also one of the few professors to be a tenured professor whose main focus of interest was the paranormal. And you just don't see that, these days. And then the other co-chair was Dr. Bob Davis. He had just recently retired as a professor of the brain, a professor of neuroscience.
Mm-hmm.
He became the other co-chair with myself. So the 3 of us became the co-chairs of this research study. And then we brought in people like Kathy Martin, like Barbara Lamb, like Denise Stoner, like Leo Sprinkle, with the we had, so we can get the baseline of the experiencers, so we can get the minds of the academics with the knowledge of the researchers together. How do we go about doing this study? And it took us about 6 months to develop that methodology. And lo and behold, we developed 3 surveys, 2 quantitative, 1 qualitative. For the quantitative survey, we wound up with 4,200 responses from over 100 countries. And then in the qualitative survey, we developed 70 open-ended questions. And for that, we had about 1,400 responses. We received more than 10,000 pages of responses. So this is a huge, massive endeavor.
Was this type of data, was this available before you did the study anywhere?
No one had it. No one. Because, as I said before, Kathy Martin, she teamed up with a study with Denise Stoner, I believe you interviewed as well. Mm-hmm. Okay. And they wound up publishing their research findings in a book titled, I think it was UFO Files or something along those lines. I forgot the name of it.
Yep.
And again, they had 50 people. All of them were abductees, and they only asked 50 questions. Okay. Well, what did we find out? Abductees were only 1/3 of the people who had these experiences. The other 2/3 had no recollection whatsoever of an abduction. Okay. Even those, so they missed 2/3 of the people. Okay.
Right.
Secondly, what we found out was that those people that had an abduction experiences, okay, eventually 70% of those people called themselves contactees and not abductees. Why? Because almost everybody eventually, many years later, when they were answering their survey, they said if we had a force to choose between was your experience negative or positive, a forced choice, 96% said it was positive. 4% said it was negative.
Right.
Now,
wow.
in the beginning, 37% viewed their experiences as highly negative. In the very beginning. Why? Because of what Dr. John Mack called the ontological shock of the experience.
Mm-hmm.
But for the vast majority of people, most of the people had more than 1 or 2 types of experiences. They had multiple experiences. And what we discovered was that the more experiences you had, the more positive your experiences became, and the more positive was your perception of the experience.
And were people being changed by their experiences?
Oh, yes. There was a tremendous... We had 4 major findings. Okay. Do we have time to go over those 4 major findings?
We're getting... Yep.
Okay, I'll go over them very quickly. If people are interested, send me an email to info@experiencer.org.
Okay.
info@experiencer.org. I will send you chapter 1 from our book. Our book is 820 pages in length. Chapter 1 is more than 120 pages.
Mm-hmm.
So it's 120 pages of data, following data after data after data. The 4 major experiences are as follows. These experiences were overwhelmingly positive. In the beginning, 37% that said it was highly negative. But towards the end, it was, we asked that question, positive, negative, or neutral, more than 25 different ways. Okay?
Yep.
We even asked for the different types of beings. We had 12 different types of beings. Okay? Even for the short gray, the one that you go to the internet and you have all these drawings of this evil gray on top of you, well, only 10.5% of the people said that their experiences were mainly negative with the short grays. That's it, 10.5%, 1 out of 10 people. Okay? So that's just an example. Okay? We asked, if you could stop your experiences, would you? Well, 86% said no, keep it coming, baby. Wow. So if this was just so horrible and dreaded, why would 86% said no? Okay. We also did, for all of our questions, we grouped them into geographic areas. All of the folks in the U.S., all of the folks in Canada, all the folks in the United Kingdom, all the folks in continental Europe, and then we grouped Australia and New Zealand together. And we looked at every single question from the 600 questions that we asked. We looked at how people answered each of these questions from these 5 major country groupings. Do you know that there was less than a 10 percentage variability in each question? Okay, so people were answering the same way, no matter what geographic area you were from. And that again shows the validity of our study. Why? Because we had 4,200 people. Okay, that answered that survey. So, survey number one, overwhelmingly positive. Number 2. These experiences were overwhelmingly transformative, okay? Like in my case, for example, I'm just an illustration. In pops a non-believer, total atheist, out pops a deeply spiritual person. Someone who might be highly religious, like my wife, you know. We had to go to church for Sunday Mass, every Thursday for group prayer meeting. Now we're lucky if she goes once every 5 months, okay, to church, okay? Money's not important anymore. It's not important. Okay, people became much more loving, much more caring for their brethren, more ecologically friendly. Okay, they had a purpose in their lives now. Okay, so it was a total, complete profile transformation. Started a what do you call it? A caterpillar. By the end of the experiences, it was a butterfly that came out. Wow. Okay, this is for 85% of the people underwent a complete dramatic transformation. We have all that data in our book. Again, this is not 1, 2, or 3, or 4, or 5 people. These are thousands of people. The third major finding, while people perceive ufology to be mainly a materialist phenomenon, well, we discovered that material aspects of this phenomenon were quite minuscule. While people might have seen a couple of UFOs, while they might have seen a couple of physical beings, 95% of their experiences were paranormal in nature. Okay, as I said before, 80% have had out-of-body experiences. 37% have had a near-death experience. Okay, brought to a matrix reality, 50% have had a medical healing by non-human intelligence, 50%. Had communications with ghosts or deceased entities, 67%. 60% have physically seen an orb. Okay. Okay. And then there was like half of them had actually communications with that orb. Okay. You name the type of paranormal experience, people were having them in very large numbers, percentage-wise. Okay. So the third major conclusion is that while these experiences were perceived by mainstream ufology as being materialist in nature, in reality, these experiences that people were having were primarily parapsychological, paranormal, you know, space-time related type of experiences, the contact modalities type of experiences, okay? Number 4, what we discovered was that the overwhelming majority of the individuals that took our survey, they were having experiences that can be categorized as a manipulation of space-time, okay?
Right.
So now, all of this confirmed my hypothesis that I was given in that experience, that they're all interrelated, okay? That it's all one phenomenon, one source. Why? Because our data shows it. It's not Rey Hernandez hypotheses anymore. No, this is what these experiences are telling us. Now, when we turn to all of these individuals that I mentioned on our research committee, okay, and as I said, there was like 15 additional other individuals that are part of this group, okay? All of them have the same hypothesis, that all of these phenomenon is one. that they're all interrelated, and that the interrelationship that they have in common is a manipulation of space-time. But what we need to do is to be able to study the experiencer of the contact modalities, not just UFOs, not just NDEs, not just OBEs, but people that are having a whole multitude of these types of paranormal experiences. So then, because we're doing in-depth interviews and surveys of these individuals, we might be able to get nuggets that would be able to reveal to us some of the secrets of what is consciousness, what is the true nature of our reality. Okay? Now, all these nuts and bolts ufologists, they're totally freaking clueless. They're clueless. They won't even open their mouths to say the word consciousness. Okay? Why? Because they consider it woo-woo science. Well, turn to the early quantum physicists, okay? Schrodinger, and all of the early quantum physicists, okay? Niels Bohr and all of them. Half of them started reading the Bhagavad Gita, okay? All the ancient mystical texts. Some of them became scholars in it, like Schrodinger, okay? Yep. All of them believe that consciousness is primary. Not all of them, but most of them, of these early quantum physicists. If you're talking to a theoretical physicist today, they'll tell you the same thing, okay? By increasing numbers, tons of them are telling us, one is a Nobel Prize winner, that they hypothesize that we live in a simulated reality, okay? What the hell does a simulated reality mean? That means that we don't live in physical reality, that we're multi, okay? We have 3 tenured theoretical physicists at MIT, all super well known. All of them believe in a simulated reality thesis. Wow. We've got professors at Caltech, we got professors at Berkeley, all over the world that are now coming out of the closet, okay, that are saying this. There was one professor, that just came out recently. I think it was very famous theoretical physicist, Carroll. Who's in the internet all over the place, okay? He just came out recently about the possibility of us living in a simulated reality, and he hadn't come out in the open for it because of fear and ridicule from his colleagues. But here's a man who's been nominated for the Nobel Prize in Physics, several times before. Yeah. So,
right. Ray, we're getting pretty close to the end. Yep. There's just a couple more things I wanted to ask you. Is this a big jigsaw puzzle that humanity has been given to figure out?
Of course, it's a big jigsaw puzzle. It's what we're doing in our organization, CCRI, Consciousness and Contact Research Institute. We're going to be laying out a new paradigm for understanding the relationship between consciousness and the contact modalities and non-human intelligence. It's a totally new paradigm. So it is a big jigsaw puzzle. Right now, we're all totally freaking clueless as to what the hell is going on, okay? Even Dean Radin, who has the highest respect for this field of parapsychology and the psi phenomenon, who many UFO buffs clearly know the name, okay? Dean Radin acknowledged to me, Ray, we're totally freaking clueless as to what is consciousness, okay? So we're giving little nuggets, but we all believe that the experiencers holds the key that would open the door to be able to extract some of this golden nugget as to what is the true nature of our reality.
The book, A Greater Reality, when is that due for release? Is that like next May?
Yes, May of 2020. The book is titled A Greater Reality, the relationship of consciousness, the paranormal, and the contact modalities. That's due to be released in May of 2020. If you want to get on our mailing list, send me an email to info@experiencer.org, info@experiencer.org. I will also send you various chapters from our 820-page book titled Beyond UFOs, The Science of Consciousness and Contact with Non-Human Intelligence. And that's available on Amazon right now.
Last question. Do you have any thoughts on disclosure? How is this connected with impending disclosure?
There is no pending disclosure. Disclosure is happening right now. Okay? My book has 4,200 people that have disclosed the reality of what's going on. Okay? You don't need the federal government to tell you what's going on. So, no, I rather believe a fellow experiencer who I meet all the time, who email me all the time, tell me about their multidimensional experiences. That's true disclosure. True disclosure is taking place from the bottom up. No, disclosure is taking place. We don't need the federal government to tell us about disclosure. All you need to do is to talk to experiencers.
Ray, it sounds like there's more people than, I guess, the minority that are experiencing this sort of thing.
Every day I get 2 or 3 that send me emails. Today I was one with a person who's a major investment banker. He lives on the Upper East Side. I mean, we're talking big mega bucks, okay? 2 days ago, I talked with a medical doctor, a pediatrician, okay? Last week, I spoke with a retired attorney who, again, made a lot of money, and he's, fully retired now. And and these are just professionals. But in terms of non-professionals, regular people, all the time, people are emailing me, and I talk to them. Mm-hmm. That's the only redeemable quality of going to a UFO conference, okay? The reason I go and I get invited and I decide to go to a ufology conference is to meet experiencers, because it's the experiencers that they don't have a belief. They know. They have a knowingness, okay? So that's why I go to these conferences, to meet the wonderful experiencers.
Okay. Ray, it's been a fascinating discussion. We'll have to sit down again shortly and talk. But good luck with it, and keep us posted on what goes on.
Thank you very much, and I apologize for my bluntness. But at this point, I don't have time to waste, with bullshit.
Yeah.
I'm just telling you what the highest level of science that's studying this phenomenon is saying, and that I'm very blunt, but that's how I believe. That's what I know. It's not what I believe. That's what I know.
Okay. Ray, thank you.
Thank you very much.
That's Rey Hernandez, the co-founder of the Edgar Mitchell Foundation for Research on Extraterrestrial and Extraordinary Experience. Well, alien abduction research has revealed some startling numbers in recent years. In fact, what many might consider to be rare, it seems that the complete opposite is the truth. Kathleen Martin is one of the world's leading UFO and alien contact researchers. She's also director of the Mutual UFO Network's Experiencer and Research Team. During the Aliens Revealed Live online summit, Kathy Martin revealed a startling statistic from her alien abduction research. It will stagger most people. When asked how prevalent alien abduction was, this is what she said.
I think that the main reason that people keep it to themselves is because they might have attempted to tell a close relative, and that person laughed at them, asked them what they'd been drinking or what they'd been smoking before they had that happen. There has been the fear of ridicule ingrained into our American society over a period of the past 60 to 70 years. And so the general public has an image of individuals who've had these experiences as being the toothless residents in a rundown trailer park somewhere, or individuals who have psychiatric disorders. Nothing can be further from the truth. This is happening to people around the world, in all societies, in all religions, in all levels of education, in all socioeconomic groupings. And certainly people who are very mentally healthy. I've received reports from military officers, from medical doctors, from psychiatrists and psychologists, from engineers, other scientists. It runs the gamut.
Because you mentioned a figure when we started the interview that was it 100 people a month?
Yes.
That is staggering.
Yes, it is. It's a very large number.
Because I guess most people would have the impression when we talk about alien abduction that it's it's a minor thing. It doesn't happen a lot, but I guess the fact that we don't hear of, the fact that people don't come forward and relate their experiences is the reason why maybe it seems that the numbers are low.
Yes, I agree with you there. There has been a history of public ridicule by disinformants who invent a scenario and propose that scenario as an alternative to what really happened to that individual. And some of them have gone as far as launching ad hominem attacks on individuals who have had this happen. Oftentimes they wanted to have this information remain confidential, but it just was thrust into the public's attention by a media after sometimes there was, such as in my aunt and uncle's case, there was a violation of confidentiality that took the story to the public. In Travis Walton's case, he had actually gone missing for 5 days before he was dropped off by this craft and then reappeared. And so there were individuals who attempted to destroy their reputations, their character, to cause them to lose their jobs. There's a long history of this kind of negative treatment, and I hope that it's getting better now. I believe that it is.
An alien abduction event used to be greeted with plenty of skepticism. The reality is that the number of people experiencing some type of abduction or contact event is a little more than the odd case people hear in the news. This is following extensive alien abduction research. Overall numbers quoted to Aliens Revealed Live, spanning several decades, may total into the 7 figures mark. That's coming up next week on the Aliens Revealed Live Files. And thanks for joining us. Don't forget to check out our site at arlhub.com. That's arlhub.com. And as always, keep looking upwards and take care.